Namaste. Kaal Sarp Yoga. Is this real or unreal? I remember long time ago, maybe 8 years ago, I was with Sridhar Swami, an enlightened master. He used to live in Alandi. Alandi is a small village, rather a town now, nearby Pune. Someday I will share his real life story. So I was with him and I asked him about this Kaal Sarp Yoga. And he said, "What is that?" There is nothing called Kaal Sarp Yoga. It is a name given by certain traditional astrologers to create fear. But who wants to listen? Negative sells faster than positive. Fear sells faster than faith. One day, I was traveling outside Pune and I had hired a cab. And the driver, while driving, was sharing a story with me. He said that one fine morning, early morning, I was driving through a very lonely road and I saw a spirit walking or crossing the road. And I was so afraid that I stopped the car and I waited until he crossed the road. And then he told me that he shared this real experience with almost all of them whom he met later on. And everybody believed it. Yes, that is right. He must have. So I said to him, if you would have told them that on that early morning I was driving, and while driving, suddenly I saw Lord Krishna standing on the road in his own bliss. And it was such a beautiful experience. If you tell this to others, they will not believe it. They will say that you must have been drunk. Because how can you see Lord Krishna? But if you tell them that I have seen an evil spirit, a bhoot, a ghost, immediately they will believe. That is how the world is. If you share something positive, they will not believe. But if you tell them that you have seen a ghost, they will immediately believe. So the point is that fear sells faster than faith. And so this Kaal Sarp Yoga, it came as a tool to create fear. And then they will ask you to perform certain puja. That puja will cost around 5 to 10,000 rupees. Then they will tell you to donate a little bit, a small piece of gold. So this is a business, a tool to generate business, Kaal Sarp Yoga. But nobody is going to believe me. In fact, majority of you will condemn me. Because as I said, remember the story of that driver. When he told everybody that I have seen a ghost, they all believed, that is right. You must be right. He is telling the truth. But then I told him that you do one thing. You tell them now that you have seen Lord Krishna with his flute in his own bliss. And it was such a beautiful thing. You tell this story to them. But I told him, nobody is going to believe you. They will say, you must have been drunk. This is how the strange this world is. So in this podcast, I have talked more on Kaal Sarp Yoga, which in reality doesn't exist. I call this as a transformative yoga. Kaal Sarp Yoga is formed when all planets are clubbed between Rahu and Ketu. But to me, it is not a Kaal Sarp Yoga. It is a highly transformative yoga. And if it falls in an evolved soul's horoscope, it can bring certain transformation, inner growth. But who wants to listen? That is why the real astrology is only for the selective ones. I have shared many more insights, as well as when between Rahu Ketu, these planets fall. Obviously, Rahu in the first house, Rahu in the second house, Rahu in the third. So, what are the results? What are the karmic lessons? What does it signify? All of these things I have mentioned in this podcast. And as always, my podcast is only for those select good-hearted people who can connect with me, who can resonate with my sharing. So let's begin. Fear sells faster than faith. Sad, but this is the reality of human life. And so from the last many decades, traditional astrologers and so-called pundits have literally fooled people by creating fear in their minds. Fear of the so-called Kaal Sarp Yoga. The so-called pundits and babas declared to the world that when all planets fall between Rahu and Ketu, Kaal Sarp Yoga is formed. In reality, it is not a Kaal Sarp Yoga, but a highly spiritual yoga that brings a great transformation within the native, who has this wonderful placement of having all planets between the axis of Rahu and Ketu. Rahu is the epitome of desires, all kind of desires. Ketu is the epitome of desirelessness, total shunya, total emptiness, total zero. Rahu is interested in becoming a hero. Ketu is interested in becoming a zero. Between these two ends, desire and desirelessness, is the story of your life. So basically, what happens when all your planets fall between Rahu and Ketu? The answer is simple. You tend to swing towards these two ends. Sometimes you are very spiritual and sometimes you are very materialistic, pleasure-seeking person. And because you keep swinging from one end to the other end, there is no stability in life. So that is the next point. This swinging brings constant change in life. Your life becomes like the phases of the moon. At times it is total dark, Amavasya, and at times it is total bright, Purnima. So instability, constant change in life, and indecisiveness is a peculiar trait of this yoga. However, it is necessary to remember that the many changes and upheavals in life eventually shape the person into a much matured, evolved person. So, this so called Kaal Sarp Yoga is actually a great transformative yoga that takes you through a roller coaster and in the process transforms you into a beautiful person. The only condition is that the native should have a certain quality to his horoscope. In an evolving soul's horoscope or in an evolved soul's horoscope, this beautiful transformative yoga can work wonders, and the native can attain great heights of success in the material world as well as also attain progress on his spiritual path. So far, you have understood the significance of this great transformative yoga, which unfortunately has been labeled as a Kaal Sarp Yoga. I assume that the man who named this beautiful transformative yoga as Kaal Sarp Yoga must have been playing the good old game Snakes and Ladders. I will now quickly share the significance of this transformative yoga based on the house placement of Rahu and Ketu in your birth chart. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in first house and Ketu in seventh house, then it simply is an indication that much is going to happen in and around the marriage and health. It may happen that by going through difficult, challenging marriage experiences, the person may evolve and attain certain wisdom. In certain cases, this placement brings the tendency of self-glorification. Many self-styled god men have this placement. This is a highly sensitive placement and provides a perfect stage for self-glorification. However, if the horoscope is of good quality, if the person is an evolved soul, then this can also lead to self-transformation. If the horoscope has the blessings of Jupiter, then this placement becomes very positive. So Jupiter need to be strong in the birth chart. This is a placement that has a certain karmic lessons for the native. The native need to understand the fact that the desire of self-glorification and attachment to the partner is the primary cause of his miseries. If this understanding or realization comes, then the native evolves and attains higher level of consciousness. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in second house and Ketu in eighth house, then it is simply an indication that much is going to happen in and around the family matters, money, bank loans, debts, and this is also highly accidental prone placement. Person comes across sudden happenings that either pull him down or rise him up. This is a perfect placement that continues to bring a lot of fluctuation in financial conditions. Sometimes the person is super rich and the other time almost bankrupt. This is a placement that has a certain karmic lessons for the native. The native need to understand the fact that the desire of accumulating money and attachment to family is the primary cause of his miseries. If this understanding comes, then the native evolves and attains higher level of consciousness. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in third house and Ketu in ninth house, then it simply is an indication that the native is going to take many risks and has the drive to do more in his field of work. Such a native is a workaholic, adventurous by nature, and constantly is on the move. The whole story of life revolves around creativity, adventures, travels, and a lot of communication. In fact, this placement has the potential to bring the best communication specialist who also happens to be a good seller. It is a good placement for material success since it is very much action oriented. This is a placement that has a certain karmic lessons for the native. The native need to understand the fact that the desire of doing too much and being greedy is the primary cause of his miseries. If this understanding comes, then the native evolves and attains higher level of consciousness. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 4th house and Ketu in 10th house, then it simply is an indication that much is going to happen in and around the mother, home, and the native is going to struggle to find balance between home and office work. This is a very difficult placement as Rahu in 4th directly impacts the mental health of the native. This placement has a strong indication of making you an emotional fool. The native struggles in life, faces certain mental problems, may need the assistance of a psychiatric or psychologist in life. If planets are placed in the 8th and 6th house, then this placement becomes more difficult and challenging for the native. This is a placement that has a certain karmic lessons for the native. The native need to understand the fact that the attachment towards home, mother, properties, and the tendency of clinging is the primary cause of his miseries. If this understanding comes, then the native evolves and attains higher level of consciousness. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 5th house and Ketu in 11th house, then it simply is an indication that much is going to happen in and around the matters of love affairs, relationships, as well as the native may also take great interest in entrepreneurship and is very much inclined towards self-learning, the many arts and sciences that can bring a certain glory or glamour in his life. This placement has a strong indication of making you a risk taker who loves to gamble. The native goes through many love relationships but is never happy and is always longing for divine love, which he never finds in life. If planets are placed in the 8th and 6th house, then this placement becomes more difficult and challenging for the native. This is a placement that has a certain karmic lessons for the native. The native need to understand the fact that you cannot experience true love or divine love in love relationships, because in relationships there are always expectations. And so love is never unconditional in relationships. However, when you seek the Buddha, when you seek Lord Krishna, when you seek Jesus, then you can experience that divine love which you have been seeking all your life but not able to find it because you have been knocking on the wrong door. If this understanding comes, then the native evolves and attains higher level of consciousness and experiences the divine unconditional love at the feet of the compassionate master. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 6th house and Ketu in 12th house, then it is simply an indication that much is going to happen in and around the matters of service, physical fitness, tackling the games of your secret enemies at work, and finding retreat whenever possible so that you can recharge yourself to go back in the market and continue with your tryst with destiny. In an evolved soul's chart, this placement brings a strong desire of serving the society, the poor. An evolved soul with this placement wants to end poverty and ignorance. He wants to end all diseases and inequality of opportunity. This placement has the potential to give birth to great doctors, politicians, and social workers. However, as Lao Tzu says, too much is the only sin. So, when you become too much entangled in serving the society, you tend to move away from your self awareness journey. And so, the karmic lesson for this placement is that the native understands the significance of balancing the act. That the sooner he understands the importance of balancing the act, the more it will be good for him. Else, he will never be able to focus on his self growth journey, which indeed is not good for his future birth cycles. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 7th house and Ketu in 1st house, then the whole focus is on the marriage matters and the marriage partner. Sex becomes a major focus of life, and the person continues to seek satisfaction in his sexual relationships, but always remains unsatisfied. It is not that the native doesn't find good sexual partners. He finds, and the woman provides him all kind of sexual pleasures. But still this man remains unsatisfied. He always wants more. He wonders what's wrong with him, but he can't stop. He continues to seek more sex, but remains utterly unsatisfied in his quest for sex. In a poor horoscope, this placement can lead to sexual intercourse with prostitutes. However, if the horoscope is of good quality and Ketu is powerful with a strong support of Lord Jupiter, then this Rahu in 7th house can dilute the negative results and provide positive results in the matters of marriage, business, and relationships. The karmic lesson for this placement is that the native understands the fact that having sex is like having fried food. When you are eating fried food, you always want to have more and more because that's what happens with oil. Similarly, sex is like oily or fried food. You want to have more and more and more, and in this mad pursuit, you make an ass of yourself. Even if this realization comes, then I would say the karmic lesson has done what needs to be done. It has brought a certain insight and understanding to your being, making you much more matured person who in next birth will focus less on sex and more on his self-evolution. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 8th house and Ketu in 2nd house, then the whole focus is on understanding what lies beneath. Such a person is always very much interested in knowing that which is not seen by the naked eyes. He is a great investigator and also loves to research a certain subject with great passion. If the overall horoscope is positive and Jupiter, Moon and Mercury are well placed, then this placement can bring a certain transformation within, leading the native to many wonderful spiritual experiences. Such a person is always in search of deep, intimate relationship. He seeks a soul mate. Ideally, such a person is found to have great depth of understanding and in fact is always taking efforts to realize his higher self. This transformative yoga of all planets falling between Rahu in 8th and Ketu in 2nd is highly transformative in nature and has the ability to transform the most sinful person into a saint. However, if the horoscope is poor, then such a native gets dragged into the ugly world of black magic, hypnotism, and thereby gets lost. he becomes a lost man. The karmic lesson is to realize the futility of this human life and to understand the hard truth and reality of human life. To put it in Buddha's words, it is to understand the fact that life is suffering. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 9th house and Ketu in 3rd house, then the whole focus is on learning, higher education, interaction with spiritual gurus, deep interest in philosophy studies, and moreover, a life dedicated to attaining higher knowledge. In a way, this is a positive placement. However, the karmic lesson is to realize the fact that knowledge burdens you. However, the karmic lesson for this placement is of such a higher level that rarely does the native self realizes this hard truth that knowledge burdens you. Bhagwan Raman Maharshi says, "Why do you wish to burden yourself with more knowledge and suffer more?" Always remember, whole life you may gather knowledge, but this futile exercise will not help you grow spiritually. Whereas when you surrender to your Guru, then you no longer need to carry the burden of knowledge. Then the dust of knowledge is wiped out, and then you are able to realize the self. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 10th house and Ketu in 4th house, the person is very much driven towards his career. He is so much obsessed with his career that he may simply ignore his personal life, his family life, and just keep running like a racing horse to reach a certain goal. Goal, that is the word. These are goal-oriented people. They do well professionally, but they fail miserably in their personal life. The karmic lesson is to realize the futility of being one-dimensional. That is to stop focusing only on career and work. Instead, find a balance. Focus on balancing your professional life with your personal life. It is necessary to remember that even if you earn millions of dollars, but still, if you are not able to spend time with your kid in a garden or in a shopping mall, if you are not able to be with your loved ones on their birthdays, then what is the point of all this money and status? Think and meditate on my words. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 11th house and Ketu in 5th house, the person has excellent networking skills. In fact, the current age is the networking age. Social media has become the most significant part of human life, and native with this placement knows exactly how to use it to their advantage. Many social media personas have this placement. They also have a strong inclination towards fulfilling their desires of attaining large amount of wealth in life. Many native with this placement are good money makers. The only condition is that Rahu must be placed in a sign of Mercury, Venus or Moon. The karmic lesson for this placement is to understand the fact that when you focus too much on the outward, when you start interacting with many people, you may become materially rich, but spiritually you become poor. Because the more you drive yourself on the outward, the more you move away from yourself, the more you are moving away from your center. And this moving away from yourself is indeed a sign of spiritual poverty. Though on the outside you may be glittering with many diamonds and rubies, however, spiritually you become poor. So, the deep karmic lesson of this placement is to find balance in your life. That you spend some time with the outer world, but also find time to spend with your inner world, your inner soul. It is perfectly fine to go in the market and share your feelings, but it is also important that for certain intervals you are able to go back into your inner world. You are able to shut the doors and spend some quality time with yourself. When all planets are clubbed between Rahu in 12th house and Ketu in 6th house, then the whole life is revolving towards serving the people in some way or the other. Many a times in an evolved soul's horoscope, such a placement signifies a native who is happy to serve without having any agenda or goal. Basically, selfless service is one beautiful aspect of this placement. I personally am fond of this placement as it also brings a great deal of spiritual bliss and wisdom in the native's life. Of course, for that, the native need to have a certain quality to his horoscope. He need to have an inclination towards spiritual practice such as daily chanting and daily meditations. However, overall, this is a very high level placement, especially when it is seen in an evolved soul's horoscope. The karmic lesson is to realize the futility of human life, to realize the sufferings that attachment brings in life, and to basically slowly get completely immersed into the higher octave of life by surrendering totally to the Guru, the divine compassionate master. Overall, all the placement of Rahu from 1st house to 12th house is positive provided the soul has a certain depth of understanding. This placement of having all planets between Rahu and Ketu also signify that the person is always an extremist. He always goes to the extreme ends. There is extremism, there is intensity, there is a deep passion. This placement works wonders when you have a certain depth of understanding. Remember, I am only responsible for what I say, not for what you understand. Based on the level of your understanding, you will understand what I am saying. And understanding is not taught in any universities or colleges. Understanding becomes deeper only when you start turning inwards. And you will be able to do so only if you are a blessed soul. Otherwise, like many of them, you will continue to criticize and hurt others by remaining ignorant throughout your life. Always remember, what the scriptures say is irrelevant. What an experienced man says is more relevant. But the majority lives with ignorance, and so they will believe in the scriptures, but they will not believe in what a living being is saying. Sad, but the hard reality of life. The real intelligence is when you question the scriptures, when you start looking within to find the real answers. Always remember, real intelligence is far superior to intellectuality. And intelligence is always an inborn quality. You may have many daughters and many sons, but they all may not have intelligence. Only one child out of the many will have this inborn intelligence, and that child can become your true successor. This reminds me of a beautiful story. An old man, very rich, was puzzled because he had 3 sons, The problem was that all three sons were born simultaneously. Their age was the same. Otherwise, in the East, the eldest son is always the successor. The problem for the old man was who was going to inherit, because all these three were of the same age. He asked a wise man, "What should I do? How should I decide who should inherit?" The old wise man gave him a certain method. The man went home. He gave 1,000 silver pieces to each son and told them, "Go to the market, purchase seeds of flowers." They went. They purchased seeds. Carts and carts came full of seeds, because 1,000 silver pieces in ancient days was big money. And just flower seeds, when all the flower seeds had come, all that the three had brought, they said, Now what? Their father said, "I am going on a pilgrimage. It may take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You have to keep these seeds with you, and when I come back, I will ask for the seeds to be given to me. And this is going to be a test also, because whosoever proves wise will inherit my whole property. So be careful." And then he went on the pilgrimage. The first son thought, "This is a strange test. If he comes after 3 years, these seeds will simply die, and he will ask for the living seeds. So the best way is to sell them in the market, keep the money, and when he comes back, purchase new seeds again, fresh and young." Very economical, mathematical, and he did that. The second son thought, "What this brother is doing is not right, does not seem to be right, because our father had specifically said, these same seeds I would like to be returned. So I will keep these seeds." He made arrangements in the basement of the house, put all the seeds there, locked it, and said, "Now whenever he comes, I will give him the key and say, these are the seeds." But the third son had a different idea. He said, "Seeds kept in a basement will not remain alive. They need soil. By the time our father returns, they will not be the same seeds, because they will be dead. They cannot sprout. How can you call them the same seeds? The seeds that our father has given us can sprout, can become trees. One seed can produce millions of seeds. That is what he has given. And when he comes after 3 years, those seeds will not be able to produce a single seed, a single sprout. This is not the way." He went behind their house. They had much land, and he sowed the seeds all over the land. Each year they become 1,000-fold more. After 3 years, when the father came, he could not believe his eyes. As far as he could see, his whole land was full of flowers. He asked the other sons. They had certainly failed the test. He said, "The third son inherits my property, because he knows how to expand, how to increase." One seed can make a whole earth green. One man can make a huge positive difference. That one man can be you. You can be that man, a positive man, a faithful man, a man who can be patient, a man who lives his life by surrendering himself to the divine compassionate master. If you are such a beautiful man, then let me tell you, there is no need of any pujas, there is no need to be afraid of any fake yogas such as Kaal Sarp Yoga. Because remember, one good seed can make a whole earth green. You are that seed. I have faith in you. I love you. God loves you, and God is always kind. Have faith in His process. He can do more with your life than you can. Surrender to God and relax. Stop worrying about the destination. Let the journey become the destination. Always remember, the journey is not towards God, the journey is with God. Love to all my fellows. Very soon I will be reaching out to you all through YouTube Live. After all, this whole effort is simply to help you all beautiful, good-hearted fellows to find your answers. Answers that can help you attain the higher realms of consciousness. Consciousness is bliss. Ignorance is misery. Love to each one of you. Stay blessed and remember to chant every day. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Jai Sri Ganesha. Jai Guru. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.